So, hello everyone. We are going to be understanding how do you implement break statement. Now, I've seen a lot of people, shying away using break statement and use other way arounds to probably work the same way, right? So, I've taken a program. You can read the program, but I've specifically mentioned that we must be using break statement in S, and with the help of the test cases, I'll help you understand what we are going to do. So, as you can just give me a second. So as you can see here, basically the program is we would be printing, let's say the user would be entering two numbers from 1 to, let's say this is, let's say, low and this is high. So the user would be entering two numbers. We want to be printing all the numbers sequentially one by one, but with a special condition. So in this case, as you can see, all the numbers from 1 to 10 are printed. So that special condition is not applied here. But if you look at this particular thing, we've said 10 and 20. What the special condition is that you must be printing all the numbers. However, you should stop after a certain special kind of number has arrived. And what that special kind of number is, that if any particular number while you're going ahead and printing is divisible by 13, then you must stop printing from the next number onward. So as example, you can see, if we are printing from 10 to 20, we printed 10, 11, 12, 13. Now we will not print 14, 15, 16 and so on so forth till 20. We will not print all of these. Why? Because 13 is the first number in the sequence that has occurred, which is divisible by 13 itself, right? So example 13 percentage 13, if I say is 0, or let's say x, and wherein we are iterating upon it, is 0. Now if you look at the same thing here, same thing goes by, we are printing from 18 to 0. So minus 18, 16, 15, 14, 13, and we've not printed minus 12, minus 11, so on and so forth. So similarly, let's say if the user would have entered, for example, 37 to, let's say, 45. So in that case, we would have printed 37, 38, 39, but we would not have printed from this onwards. Why? Because 39 percentage 13 is 0. That is, it leaves no remainder. That is, it is perfectly divisible by it. So we'll have the same thing work around using a for loop and a while loop. So as you can see, first of all, we've asked the user to enter two values, low and high. So I hope that you know about this. So we can write x comma y, and automatically both the values will be getting assigned to it, right? You can do it only for two ones. But one more thing that we've entered, so I'll explain this to you a little later, but assume that we've gotten the input. I'll explain this to you a little later. So what has happened here is, let's say if the user has entered 10 and 20 as two values. So basically low is this and high becomes this. Now in this case, one more thing that we have to necessarily be doing is, in Python, all the inputs that the user has entered get entered as string inputs. So if we want to work with numbers, we have to convert them into integer values, which is why I've used int low, int high whenever I'm running a range. So this particular for loop will try to run itself in the range of 10 to, in fact, okay, so I think this is a little incorrect. This should be int high plus 1. Why? And this was a great error at my end, and I am just realizing it now. Why? Because again, 10 to 20, it will not run for 20 had the 1 plus wouldn't, if the 1 plus wasn't there, right? So now it will run for 20 also, because Python is non-inclusive. However, we are stopping this loop with one particular thing. Every time when we are running it, so let's say first time when we are running it, 10 gets printed, and then we are checking 10 percentage 13, is it equal to 0? No, it's not equal to 0. The remainder would be 10. Again, we increment, or the for loop increment it for us, same 11 percentage 13, it's 11. Then same thing, 12 would be printed, 12 percentage 13 is equals to 12. Now finally 13 would be printed first because we are printing it, and then 13 percentage 13 is 0. So we are breaking now from the for loop. Now what will happen is, this for loop will terminate right and now only, even though there are a lot of numbers starting from 14 to 20 still pending to be run. But whenever a break statement arises, we are like, okay, break statement arises, for loop close. Doesn't matter what the conditions are, doesn't matter if it has to run 1 million times, 1 time, 2 time, 20 time, doesn't matter. Right, so let's run this once, and we'll be able to check this, and then there's one more way or a few more things that I want to teach you along the way. So let's say I enter 2, 10 and 20. So as you can see, 10 and 20 has been printed. Now a special condition. So for example, let's say -3 and 11. So as you can see here, -3, 2, 1, 0. It has printed till 0. Why? Because again, at 0, 0% 13 would be 0. It leaves no remainder. This is a workaround. So this is perfectly behaving as expected. But let's run wherein this condition is not satisfied. So let's run it again. So let's say 1 to 10. So as you can see, all the numbers here are perfectly printed. Now one more thing here is, and I want to help you learn a few things. So for example, let's remove this. Now why this particular thing is able to get two values is, for example, obviously this 1 and 10 is a string. When we are entering it, so the compiler thinks that okay, we've entered 1 and 10 as a string, and it's simply like, let's say if I would have said I am, so I is like 1, am is like 10, so it doesn't know it's a number. But what we are telling, using this split function, which works by default like this. Just give me a second. By default like this. So wherein we are telling that okay, split whatever you are reading whenever you read an empty space. So even if I don't write it, the by default nature of it is this. So by default it's going to be splitting whenever it sees a space. So let's even run this. So for example, let's say, in fact, let me just say print low and print high, and let's enter like I am. So as you can see, I is printed separately, am is printed separately. But for example, let's say if I would have said here dash. So if I'm printing it as of now, and let's say I am. So as you can see, now it will separate whenever it reads dash. So enter I am. Let's run it again for something. I am dash Atulya. So in this case, I am is read as a separate thing. So, very important thing for you to note by, it could be anything. It could be, let's say, a comma also. So in this case, or let's say 1, 10. So as you can see, two inputs are right in that particular way. Now I'd like to teach you one more thing here, very importantly. Now the problem here is that the input that we are getting we will always be getting it as a string, right? So this is basic implementation of while loop. This is something that I'll explain you a little later. Okay, this is something that I'll explain you a little later when we are working with a while loop, right? Now for while loop, I need to do increment here. I cannot run ranges and everything. So what I've done here to accept all of these inputs, since we can't be like, if the user enters 1 in one line and 10 in one line, the user is not entering like this. Or in the program, it's specifically given that you will not take input in two separate lines. It's given that okay, they'll just simply enter 1 and 10. And then it's your job now to figure out what you are going to do about it. Simple. So there are many multiple ways on how you can do it. I'm going to teach you one more way. Let's say in this case, what I've done here is whatever the user is entering here. So first of all, it'll say input number. So we are asking that okay, enter the numbers, and then by default, so let's say whenever we've entered 1 and 10, so what happens? It takes, first of all, it splits them into two separate. So as of now, it's one string. Using this line, this particular thing has been split into two separate strings as of now. But as of now, still it is string right now also. So what I've done here is I've used something called as a map. I hope that you know about map. If you've not, just refreshing it once again, wherein I'm saying that okay, apply map but accept values and convert them into integers. So basically using this particular line, this map int, I've converted these things into a integer or two integer values, and then using list statement, because I want to map will again cause some problems, so I'm accepting this as string, so it becomes 1 comma 10. So as of now it becomes 1 comma 10 as a list. Now since again list is like an array and I want to use these two values, so it's better to create low and high. So I've done this here, that okay, I've created a low value as list 0 index and I've created the high value as list 1 index. Now I'm using the program just perfectly as I would want. Same thing happens here. If I think I can even remove this particular line. Let's run this once. So let's say if I enter 1 comma 10, so as you can see it is printed perfectly. So the same thing happens as soon as this condition is satisfied, we will not, the while loop will perfectly terminate. There's no, so as you can see here, it ran for 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 also it ran, because obviously we are printing first and checking the condition later. But 14 onwards, if this condition was not there, it would have run till 20, including 20. Right? Because I've included equal to here. Right? But it will not run beyond because of this break statement. Break statement terminates a loop wherever it is. It's like, I don't care how many times you had to run. I am break here. You will not run anymore. Simple as that. So that's pretty much about it. I think there are two more ways on how you can do this. I don't want to be explaining you both of these, but I've just written it so probably you can understand. This comma is, let's say if I would have entered like 1 comma 10 as a string, right? I've already explained it previously to you, so which is I'm not explaining it now. This is int for x in input numbers. So we are like for each x in input numbers. So let me in fact explain you this one. I'll explain you this one. So let's say if the user had entered 1 comma 10 as input. So let's say here, let me run it. So here, if I would have entered it like 1 comma 10, 1 comma 10, right? If I want to write this space, then I should have had been doing this, right? So in this case, 1 comma 10, 1 comma without space 10. If I would have written it like this, so what would have happened? This particular line x, in fact this particular line, this 1 comma 10, it would have changed it into 1 and 10 as two separate values as of now. And then we are saying for each x that you are reading, first of all apply int. So as of now it becomes like a string. Before it was like string, but for each x, so it's like, okay, for each x, what do you want to do? You want to apply int of x, so it will become a integer, and even this will become a integer. And then we are saying that, okay, put that into a bracket. We've said it in a bracket. So that's one other way you are saying that, okay, I want 1 comma 10 as two integer values in a list, and that becomes our list 1. So that's pretty much about it. Thank you. Maybe this may be a little complicated, but this is something that you should be spending time upon. So thank you so much. I'll see you up ahead in the next video.